Saint Monica, who lived in the 4th century, is one of the most awe-inspiring women saints in the history of the Church. Now, she was instrumental in converting her wayward son Augustine, who afterwards went on to become much more famous than even her. Did you know that she once kicked him out from her home? Yes, you heard me correctly. So let me explain. Monica was born in the year 331, and at the age of 20, she was married to Patricius, a pagan official at Tasgate in North Africa. She had 3 children, whom Augustine was her eldest. Now, the violent temper and dissolute pagan habits of Patricius caused her untold suffering and made the Christian education of her children very difficult. But with God's grace and Monica's constant prayers and sacrifices, Patricius, after 18 long years of marriage, finally embraced the Catholic faith and died at peace with God and His Holy Church. From then onwards, Augustine was her sole concern, for during his studies at Carthage, which is in modern-day Tunisia, he had become ensnared by the Manichaean heresy. Now, Manichaeism was a religion founded in the latter half of the 3rd century, which was a mixture of Zoroastrian dualism, Babylonian folklore, Buddhist ethics, and some small and superficial addition of Christian elements. This heretical belief had spread and attracted many scholars, including Augustine. Now, why did Monica, a Christian mother, kick out Augustine from her home? I'm sure that all you mothers out there watching this video, whether you're Christian or not, must be wondering, how could Monica be so heartless as to kick out or expel her son, flesh of her flesh and bone of her bone, from her home? And how could the Catholic Church have canonized or declared such a woman to be a saint worthy of being imitated? And all you sons out there must be wondering how hurt and broken-hearted Augustine must have felt. Imagine being expelled from your home by your own mother, who gave birth to you, who nourished you and loved you with a love that cannot be compared or rivaled by any other human love. Well, before you jump to any conclusion or make any rash judgments about Monica or the Catholic Church, let's find out the circumstances in which this melodramatic and historical incident took place, which would change both their lives forever. As I mentioned to you before, the young Augustine was deceived into joining the Manichaeans in Carthage. And we all know from experience that bad news always travels much faster than good news. So soon after Augustine had joined this horrible religion, the news reached his mother's ears. At first, she could hardly believe it. Now, this was a setback which she was totally unprepared for, and it dashed all her hopes. She would have preferred to hear that Augustine had died rather than apostatized from the one true faith. And yet, she conformed her will and her broken heart to God's holy will and continued to hope in Him whose mercy cannot fail. Later on, she heard that Augustine had publicly renounced his childhood faith. He had joined the Manichaeans as an auditor, the first degree of initiation in this unholy cult. And he was now propagating this abominable heresy and persuading his companions to follow his bad example with all the zeal and ardor that he usually did everything. Monica wept ceaselessly for her son who had strayed from the Christian faith. He was now dead to God. That God was her all in all. Now, Augustine's vacations were near and he would soon return home. Monica thought to herself that perhaps things wouldn't be as bad as she had imagined. She hoped that Augustine joining the Manichaeism might be a passing whim or fancy. She'd have to wait and see. But That hope was in vain. Augustine had barely spent a day at home when he obstinately began expressing his new erroneous doctrines, convinced that his mother would listen to him. But it was not to be. Immediately, the Christian in Monica arose above her motherly instinct. Her horror of heresy was stronger than her love for her own son. Standing tall before him, outraged and indignant, she boldly resisted him to his face and told him, quite frankly, that if he continued to speak in such a way, she could no longer receive him at her table or even in her home. The young and brash Augustine was totally amazed. He had found the limit of his good mother's patience. With his head down, in shame, he left the comfort of his mother's house and was obliged to ask his friend and benefactor, Romanius, for shelter. Soon after he left, Monica's heart melted and her motherly love overwhelmed her. With bitter tears, she cried out to God for help. Her grief seemed unbearable. However, as night slowly set in, it came with a peace. And as Monica slept, exhausted from weeping, she had a mysterious dream which brought her a wonderful sense of hope and comfort. It seemed to her in the dream that she was standing on a narrow plank of wood, her heart filled with bitter sorrow as it had been throughout that day. Suddenly, there came towards her a resplendent young man of fair complexion. Smiling at her, he asked her very amiably, why was she crying? She responded, I am weeping for the loss of my son. Grieve no more, he replied, for look, your son is standing there beside you. Monica turned her head. It was true. Augustine was standing by her side on the plank of wood. Be of good cheer, continued the stranger, for where you are, there shall he also be. Then Monica woke. The words of that radiant young man were still ringing in her ears, and it seemed to her that God had spoken through him. In the morning, Monica went straight to Augustine, and bubbling with excitement and joy, she told him of her wonderful dream. Perhaps, suggested Augustine, anxious to turn it to his own advantage, it means that you will come to see things as I do. No, said Monica, for he did not say, where he is, you shall be, but where you are, he shall be. Augustine was even more impressed by the earnestness of his mother's answer than by the dream itself, though he pretended not to take it either seriously. A short while later, Monica went to meet and beg a certain holy bishop, not St. Ambrose, that's his bishop, to use his influence with Augustine to bring him back to the truth. The wise old man listened attentively to her story. Let him alone for the present, but pray much, was his advice. For as yet he is obstinate and puffed up with these new ideas. If what you tell me of your son is true, he will read for himself and then find out his own error. Then, seeing the anguish of his poor mother, he revealed to her that he himself, in his youth, had been led away by the men, and had even been employed in chronicling their works. It was that which saved him. For, as he wrote, the truth became clear to him. He had seen how their doctrines were to be avoided. Then Monica wept, filled with disappointment, for she had counted greatly on his help. A sudden pity seized him. Go thy way, and God blessed him. And then, inspired by the Holy Spirit, the venerable bishop uttered these words, which have since become immortal. It is impossible that a son of such tears should perish. Monica's dream and the words of the bishop were like a ray of light in the darkness. She drew fresh hope from them and redoubled her prayers. Now that we know that the historical circumstances and the reasons which brought St. Monica to expel Augustine from her home, and our perplexity has been transformed into wonder and amazement at the virtues of this admirable woman and saintly mother. If her love for Augustine was merely human, she would have preferred to enjoy his presence for selfish and sentimental reasons. However, since her love for him was in function of her love of God, she preferred to displease her son than displease her God. And in doing so, it broke her tender mother's heart. Since St. Monica had true love of God, she wanted to save her son's immortal soul, which meant that she had to correct him, although it may have seemed cruel to the human eyes. Now, true love demands that we correct our near and dear ones, or those under our authority when required. And so, we should always remember that when we are corrected by our parents, elders, or even superiors, they are doing it out of fraternal charity and for our own spiritual or even temporal good, and not out of hatred for us, but to discipline us. Our attitude when we are corrected, justly or unjustly, should be the one found in the book of Proverbs. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Well, dear viewers, has anyone ever broken your heart for no fault of yours? Or have you ever felt deceived, or worse yet, betrayed by someone you trust? Perhaps your best friend, or even, God forbid, betrayed and let down by someone within your own family or religious community? All of us have passed through this bitter experience in some form or another, and in varying degrees. And this can leave us with terrible scars, emotional, mental, and even spiritual, which can last throughout our whole lives. And that is why today I'm going to invite you to give your heart to someone who will never, ever deceive, betray, or let you down. Someone very special who will always be there to assist you in good times and above all in bad times, when everyone else has forgotten or abandoned you. Someone who will apply a soothing and heavenly balm to heal those terrible scars which no human physician can ever possibly heal. And who is this special someone? None other than our Blessed Mother Mary. I'm inviting you to consecrate yourself as slaves of love of Our Lady, according to the method of the great Marian saint, Saint Louis Marie Guillaume de Montfort. And I promise you that if you do this consecration seriously, it will change your life forever, and heaven is yours for the taking. Well, if you don't believe me, at least believe St. Louis de Montfort, and considered as one of the greatest Marian saints of all times. Please click the link below to find out more about this consecration and take advantage to enroll yourself in the next consecration course, which will be given by Father Timothy Ring. And also, don't forget to invite your family and friends to participate. Well, what I revealed to you today about the life of St. Monica is just the tip of the iceberg. Did you know that when she was a young girl, she got into the bad habit of secretly and slyly drinking wine from the cellar until, well, unfortunately, we run out of time. So join us next episode to find more about St. Monica and how St. Monica overcame this apparently innocent childhood habit, which could have had disastrous consequences for her. Until next time, and Salve Maria.